Hello again, and thank you for joining us on the Providence College Podcast. I'm Charlie Joyce, your host today. Our producer is Chris Judge of the class of 2005. Our guest today is Dr. Mary O'Keefe, Associate Professor of Psychology and Department Chair. Dr. O'Keefe, who holds a PhD from the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences, has taught at PC for 29 years. Her areas of expertise are in medical and health psychology, with a special interest in building resilience. She's here to talk to us about her research and teaching in resilience and about academic resilience, a concept that is taking on increased significance to faculty and students at the college. Welcome to the Providence College Podcast, Dr. O'Keefe.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate your interest and support in our efforts to promote student resilience.
By all means. And speaking of resilience, it's obviously a fascinating behavior, I'll say, that nearly every one of us exhibits from time to time. How would you best describe it? And give us an idea, kindly, if you would, of the depth of study out there on the topic.
Well, from my area of health psychology or medical psychology, we've been talking about constructs related to resilience for quite a while, certainly over 40 years, but it's changed the language that we've used. So previously, we've talked about hardiness. The concept of grit is related somewhat to resilience. But with resilience, we're looking at the ability to adapt to the challenges that we experience. For some people, those challenges are very serious. For others, they're just the day-to-day challenges that are a part of living.
And when and how, Mary, did you become interested in resilience?
Well, I've probably been interested in resilience and promoting resilience for as long as I can remember. Given that my area is health psychology or medical psychology, one of the things that I'm very interested in is the intersection between physical and psychological well-being. I think it's a false disconnect to separate those two things out. And when we're looking at resilience, we can look at resilience from a number of different perspectives, whether or not a person is resilient physiologically, whether they're resilient psychologically. Most recently, my work at PC on resilience grew out of the PC Lifelines Project. Back in 2017, the Associate Vice President for Student Services, Jim Campbell, received a grant. He's the primary investigator on a grant from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration designed to, it's a suicide prevention grant, a Garrett Lee Smith grant. And he asked if I would serve as the evaluator for the grant. The evaluator just makes sure that there is appropriate assessment being done, that we're following all of the rules. But as a part of that, it's a cross-divisional effort. So me being in academics, him being in student services, and it's very appealing to me to work together with student services to try to promote student well-being. Another thing is that there's been a bit of a paradigm shift in the way that we think about preventing suicide. Past work has looked at identifying risk factors and then targeting students who are exhibiting those risk factors. A more recent approach, and probably a more successful approach, has been to try to promote protective factors across the student body. So rather than focusing on students who are presenting with problems with depression or anxiety, trying to promote overall health, well-being, and thus resilience across the student population.
Dr. O'Keefe, a couple of years ago, you were invited, to participate in a fellowship program in Israel, in part because of your expertise in health psychology and resilience. This was the inaugural Winter Faculty Fellowship sponsored by the Jewish National Fund and Media Watch International. Tell us about the fellowship experience and its impact on you pedagogically and personally. Was there a lot of relevance eventually to teaching and potentially for student learning that came out of this experience?
Well, I can say one of the things, we know that there are some key elements to promoting resilience, and one of them is kind of engagement, taking advantage of opportunities, kind of sometimes taking risks and being willing to go outside of your comfort zone. And that certainly happened to me with this experience. I felt very fortunate to be selected, but I don't have a lot of international experience. And so it definitely pushed me outside of my comfort zone. One part of the fellowship program is that we get to connect with colleagues in Israel who are doing similar work. So I get to meet with a number of interesting people. One of them was Saul Kimi. He's at Tel Hai University in Israel, and he's an internationally known scholar in the area of resilience. The way that he looks at resilience is really, Israel is a place of a great beauty and great resilience, but also great political conflict. So he looks at resilience a little bit differently, looks at it within the context of community resilience, even country resilience. He's developed measures of community and country resilience. Also resilience in individuals following missile attacks. I met with another scholar, Dr. Golan Shahar from Ben Gurion University. He also does work on resilience, particularly following trauma. And so while their work is, and certainly learning about resilience is, and the way that they're studying it is something that I'm able to use and build upon in classes, we're looking at resilience. For most of our students, fortunately, they don't have the same sort of constant threat of missile attacks, the same level of trauma. But I'm always tremendously inspired by students in my classes and the experiences they have and how well they are able to do in spite of really serious challenges. I teach a course in health psychology, and by the nature of the content of the course, I often have students enrolled who struggle with health problems. I have learned through the journals that they keep in the class that I'll have students in the class who are suffering from life-threatening diseases, cystic fibrosis, people who are on waiting lists for liver transplants, people who are undergoing chemotherapy for cancer, and they refuse to identify by their diseases. They continue to keep up with their schoolwork. They are the very definition of resilience. And then we have other students who struggle with relatively minor, normal developmental challenges. And so helping to learn what we know. Another thing that's changed about the study of resilience is that we used to look at it as kind of a static trait, something that you could measure. And so you have this level of resilience, I have this level of resilience. Now we know that it's an adaptive process. We all have the capability of being resilient, as long as we, certainly it's easier for some people than others. We know that there are certain developmental experiences that can challenge a person's ability to be resilient, so that if you have childhood trauma, if you get separated from your parents when you're very young, those sorts of things can undermine resilience. But there are also skills that we can learn, and that's what we're trying to promote and kind of understand the scholarship of resilience, but also apply it personally to the students who are taking these courses.
I believe you were planning in advance, designing, I should say, a course in resilience. You've offered, I think once already, psychology of resilience. Did that experience in Israel, did that have any kind of a factor or help inform you in any way for that particular planning process for the course, for the advanced seminar?
It did. The researchers who I've mentioned thus far, they have a body of work that I was able to draw from in order to think about how I wanted to structure the course, in order to kind of organize the readings for the course. But I have to say that eventually I had a reading list that the students had, but I abandoned just using a reading list, which is something that I usually do in my advanced level courses. But there's a wonderful book by Ann Maston called Ordinary Magic. And it's Ordinary Magic, Resilience in Development. She refers to resilience as ordinary magic because she sees it as a normal developmental process, that we have, it's adaptive. We all have the skills within us. We're biologically programmed to be able to be resilient. So it's a normal process. We just have to kind of practice the skills that help us to be more resilient. And certainly I saw that embodied in many people that I encountered when I was in Israel.
And the advanced seminar, again, Psychology of Resilience, what do you hope to have students get out of this course?
I want them to understand the science of resilience. Sometimes when something becomes very popular, it's more anecdotal, it's about feelings, it gets kind of fluffy. And my training as a scientist, I want them to recognize that there's evidence-based best practice in the promoting of resilience. So the Matson book that I just mentioned, it really does a very nice job of communicating the science of resilience. But then an equally important part to me is to have the students apply the science of resilience to reflect upon their own experiences and to help promote their own resilience.
One of the unique requirements, I think, of the course is the fact that you ask students to complete a personal resilience portfolio. What does that actually entail?
Well, the students are required to select 5 different activities that we know do promote resilience, and then write a reflection on those activities. The examples are non-random acts of kindness. They have to, for 1 week, every day, they engage in at least one random act of kindness. It has to be anonymous. They don't get any personal benefit from it, and then write about that experience. There is a digital detox option, and when I was thinking about the different elements, my young adult children told me that I had to make this optional, that it might be too difficult for students to complete a digital detox, but it's a 24-hour detox from all kind of electronic devices, social media. They're provided with a wiki guide that helps them prepare for this so that they can let their family and friends know that they won't be reachable. There's a gratitude project element that's one of the options, where you write a letter of gratitude to somebody who had a meaningful impact on your life. There is a student engagement element where we encourage students, or I encourage students, to attend something that's they wouldn't normally do. So it's pushing them outside of their comfort zone to be engaged in the broader campus community. And this is it's not only good for the students, but it's good for Providence College, for us to have people who maybe have different types of beliefs and experiences interacting with one another. And then finally, I have the mindful immersion in nature. I really am a strong proponent of the health benefits of being in nature. I'm very interested in the interconnection between human and ecosystem health. And so there's an option where they spend, I think it's 8 hours. They have to spend a full day mindfully in nature, disconnected, and then write about that experience. And again, this is all based on different evidence that says that these activities are going to promote their well-being and thus their resilience.
So they obviously have the option of picking from these different activities?
They do. They pick, and I had worried that the digital detox would be the least popular, but I think it was actually the most popular. And most of the students, some of the reflections were very powerful, by the way, and they were a pleasure to read. That's one of the things about this, teaching these types of courses, is that they're very rewarding as an instructor, because they're very enjoyable to read how the students, are able to find meaning in these experiences. So for the digital detox, many of the students identified, or they did it over Thanksgiving, and their family members participated as well. So they just had a full day as a family where people were not looking at their cell phones at the dinner table. They just, played games and again, just, the student reflection suggested that it was very meaningful for them.
What a great outcome. We should all do that.
Right, I think so.
This concept of resilience is something you've helped formalize at a deeper level in the curriculum here at Providence College. You're the faculty coordinator for the Riccobono Academic Resilience Faculty Fellowship Mini Grants Program. That's a mouthful. But this initiative is being implemented in classrooms this fall as we speak. It's supported by Chris Riccobono of the class of 2001 and of Untuckit Apparel fame, and his wife Amy Parillo of the class of 2003. What really lies at the core of this program, Dr. O'Keefe?
Well, I think there are a number of things. We're so grateful to Chris and Amy for their support for the program. And, I think one of the reasons that they felt it was so important they contributed to the Division of Student Services, because I think Chris in particular noted that he had some experiences with anxiety and depression as a student, not uncommon. We know that it isn't at all uncommon, but he wanted to be able to provide support for other students so that they might not have the same sorts of struggles, or at least that there would be more support. What we have done, again, working with Jim Campbell and Cheryl Granai, who is our outreach coordinator for the PC Lifelines Project. In the fall of 2018, we went to an academic resilience symposium that was held at the University of Pennsylvania. And we've been doing a number of things on the suicide prevention but one of the common themes is that it can be hard to get faculty involved in the process. We feel ill-prepared, perhaps, as faculty. I'm a psychology faculty member, so I feel a little bit more comfortable with this sort of work. But my colleagues across campus feel a little bit less so. And from the people who were at this resilience symposium, one of the things that we heard in order to get faculty buy-in is something like our academic resilience program, where it's referred to as curricular infusion, where you encourage faculty to build activities, exercises that promote resilience right into the curriculum, to link it to what they're teaching. And we had some great models for that at the symposium that we went to. Georgetown in particular, they have an Everhard program that is designed to promote student well-being and resilience. And some other programs, people who do this work are very generous with their resources. And so we decided that we would try to model what has been successful at other places and try to encourage faculty to build in exercises and reflections and content that would help promote student resilience.
And I realize that now we have the first 8 inaugural fellows officially named.
We do.
And as I mentioned, they're implementing some of these strategies and thoughts in the curriculum as we speak. You mentioned some models, Georgetown, otherwise. What is there an example or two in terms of a way a faculty member would integrate academic resilience into the curriculum? Well,
one example is with Father Nick Austriaco, who's teaching Bio 103, and he recognizes that Bio 103 is a course where students have a pretty significant amount of anxiety going in. He also, and there's good evidence to suggest, we know that levels of student anxiety and depression have been increasing over the past 10 years. And Father Nick is very interested in the role of social media, and that while people are connected electronically to one another, they're becoming somewhat less connected in person and having meaningful interactions with others. So he's really trying to build in kind of the science of social pain, the science of anxiety, and also the benefits of social support, looking at it from a physiological perspective. We know, for example, that When we connect with others, it helps release hormones like oxytocin that are beneficial and then suppress the stress hormones like cortisol, the catecholamines, that can be damaging not only to our physical health, but can promote anxiety and other unpleasant states. So he's building that content right into the class. And then I know from talking with him that on Fridays he devotes time specifically to talking about, he calls it his Riccobono time, where they actually just talk about, I think, and reflect upon what the students may be able to do to help promote their resilience as they're working through this very challenging course.
And this is happening in different disciplines,
It is.
right?
It's wonderful, yes. And so it's not just social work and psychology where you might think they do that all of the time, but we have representatives and fellows, we call them our RAR fellows, for Riccobono Academic Resilience Fellows, across the 3 different schools. So we have them from the School of Arts and Sciences, the School of Professional Studies, the School of Business, and we've got global studies, education, management represented, theology, biology. So it's a wonderful, we couldn't be happier with this inaugural group.
Great. It's very early in the semester. I mean, we're barely into the 3rd week of classes. Is there any kind of early feedback or buzz that you're hearing either from the faculty, fellows themselves, or from students at this point?
Well, I know we had a workshop at the after the fellows were selected, a retreat. We called it a mini retreat, where we talked about kind of what their plans were, and that initial just the feeling was almost palpable that people are really invested in this process and looking forward to having an opportunity. Some of us do these elements, and it doesn't take it's not necessarily labor intensive to build things into your course that are going to promote student well-being and resilience. But being able to meet with other people who are also invested in this process and then talk a little bit about what works or what struggles we may have, or if we encounter students who definitely need a little bit more help, what sorts of resources are there for those students. So I think it's building a sense of community among the faculty. And also what I hope is going to happen, and I think it will based on my own experience, is that there's an element of contagion. Once we start doing this and we realize that it kind of is very satisfying and it makes us enjoy the whole process more, and we see that students are more invested in the process so that they're more successful in the classes, then other people are also going to want to be involved in this curricular infusion effort to try to promote student well-being.
It really gets at the heart of academic excellence and student well-being, doesn't it?
It really does. And it also kind of relates to our core and our strategic plan, core focus to work across the divisions of the college, that it can't just be the job of the personal counseling center to look out for student well-being. It's all of our jobs. It really takes a community, and I think that's a special thing about PC anyway. We get the vibe that the Fryer family, for many of us, it's not just a phrase. It's really something that we're invested in. So I think it's completely consistent with that.
Dr. O'Keefe, psychology continues to be one of the more popular majors here at the college, as you well know. Right now, in terms of the class of 2023, it's the 5th most popular major among those students. There are more than 60 students who are designated psychology majors this new academic year. I don't have to tell you that. But why do you think there's such an interest that's been sustained in psychology here at Providence College?
Well, not only is psychology a satisfying discipline and, built right into it is an opportunity to learn a little bit more about yourself, and that can be very satisfying. But at Providence College, we have a very strong scientific foundation. Our psychology department is housed we're very fortunate now to be in the newly renovated science complex. We're with the Department of Biology, Chemistry, Physics. We have an interdisciplinary neuroscience program that is very popular. I think that another reason that we're so popular is that we have a very engaged faculty. Most of our faculty have active research labs. Many of them have substantial grant support. And because Providence College is a primarily undergraduate institution, in order to be productive with the grant work, you need to have research assistants, people who are working on these projects, and it's undergraduates. They have lots of opportunities to be intimately involved in really important and meaningful research experiences.
Another positive thing, obviously, is the new Lucille and Leo Kayofa Center for Psychological Sciences. Next month, of course, is the dedication at homecoming. How will the center be used?
Well, the center is, they have provided us with state-of-the-art research space. And so, as I was just mentioning, I have many of my colleagues, and I myself included, we have research labs, and we have beautiful new space now to conduct the research. We have 2 developmental labs, so families can bring children in to do really important work, and our undergraduate students serve as research assistants there. We have several neuroscientists who are doing work. We have several social psychologists, cognitive psychology, health psychology. So it's primarily the renovated research space, also renovated classroom space, and we like having also newly renovated office space.
Your department obviously has a lot of buzz about it at this time. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your perspective, and thanks for being our guest today.
Well, I'm very grateful to you for having me. Thank you very much, Charlie.
And thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us on the Providence College podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast in all the usual places: iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. Thanks again to our producer, Chris Judge. I'm Charlie Joyce. Until next time.